Hello and welcome to my driver's ranking video for the Spanish Grand Prix, a race that was actually a little bit more interesting than I first imagined. This is also the series in which you guys can get involved. Following the top line that's down in the description below, you'll be taken to a small little Google Docs form in which you can rank each of the drivers, 1 being the absolutely worst weekend they could have possibly had, and 20 being the absolute best. The aim of this is to then average out all of your audience scores and then compare them to mine, in which I'll be revealing in this video here, and then in a video that will come out probably on Tuesday, we'll be comparing them to my data algorithm and see how they compare. We will also be going over the standings for the audience prediction scores, and again we have had some exceptionally high scores this Grand Prix. Portimao and Spain, we had some very good scores, and there are also 60 entrants into this contest. That is absolutely mega. But without further ado, we will jump on into today's video, and that is the Spanish Grand Prix driver rankings. We'll quickly just gloss over the championships and where we stand. Lewis Hamilton, almost at a century of points, coming into round number 5 on 94, 14 clear of Max Verstappen now, with Valterri Bottas getting ahead of Lando Norris by just 6 points. Leclerc is 1 point behind that in the battle of best of the rest, with Sergio Perez on 32. And then taking a brief look at the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes just extend their lead a little bit to now 29 points, and they already have over double the points of McLaren, who are 5 clear from Ferrari, who are then comfortably cleared themselves of Alpine, AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, with Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams yet to score. And so let's now take a look at the prediction scores, and for the very first time I have topped this leaderboard, but I have it joint. I haven't won outright just yet, but for the first time I've actually done exceptionally well, scoring 19 out of 25 points, joint with VimZ25. I think this was his first entry, I believe off the top of my head, a Doctor Who channel, a long-standing subscriber of the channel, close behind on 18, Arturo as well on 17, Tom Sayer on 16, Joe Bisho on 16 as well, Evan Darcy, the current championship leader as of round number 3 on 16 points too, all the way down to also long-standing subscribers Elliot on 13, Matej and Ritteraj unfortunately languishing just a little bit in the Spanish Grand Prix with 9 out of 25, but it is all up for grabs in Monaco. There is still a long way to go in this season. Now, just one quick message: if you do see your name in this list for the next submissions, please try and keep the names as similar, if not identical, as possible, because there have been a couple of times where I've seen some names that are similar, and I don't know if they're the same person or not. So try and keep the names as similar as possible, and then I can mush all of the points together. I wouldn't want anyone to end up splitting off into 2 people's scores, if that makes sense. So try and keep the names as simple and as identifiable as possible to yourself, and that'll make my life just that little bit easier. But then taking a look at the season scores so far and where we stand, Evan Darcy still holds on to his championship lead, just 3 points now ahead of Aaron from the 5 Red Lights channel, who also had a very good Spanish Grand Prix predictions, 2 points ahead of Joe Bisho, who is just 1 point ahead of a Doctor Who channel. There's then a little bit of a gap down to me in P5, who is 1 point clear of Mitch. Also, Arturo, Gemma Gibson were all in such a close fight. I'm also pulling a little bit away from Hal as well. I think there's, 43 to 49? There's 6 points between us, but again, this can all so very easily change. And not to worry if you have just started this series as well, you can always catch up. It is very easy to gain like 20 out of 25 points, or even 25 if someone has actually got that just yet. Not quite, but I'm sure someone might this season. And this prediction series, in which you guys can get involved with, gets launched on the Thursday before each Grand Prix weekend, so there is plenty of time to get your predictions submitted. But with all of that admin out of the way, we will now jump on into the driver ranking section of today's video. I will be ranking the drivers from 1 through to 20, 20 being the best and 1 being the worst, taking into consideration both qualifying and the race as well. So I would like you to do the same once you follow that link in the top line of the description. And we are starting, of course, with Lewis Hamilton, 19 out of 20, a stellar stellar Grand Prix performance, a exceptional qualifying to claim his 100th pole position and then also his 98th Grand Prix victory in some style, very reminiscent of his Hungary 2019 Grand Prix victory over Max Verstappen as well. That is a very, very good Grand Prix. 19 out of 20 for Lewis Hamilton. His teammate though, Mr. Valterri Bottas, gets 13 out of 20. Lost out on the start to Charles Leclerc and then just sort of struggled from there and then didn't play the team game. He was sort of driving for himself for a little bit. He was told, don't hold Lewis up, he's battling for the lead. And he just didn't get out of the way. He actually made Lewis do a proper overtake into turn 10, going round the outside, which was quite nice. It was just holding him up for about half a lap, sort of holding or giving hopes, I would say, to Red Bull that perhaps this was enough to keep Lewis Hamilton at bay, but it was not. So yes, 13 out of 20 is Valtteri Bottas' score. Then Max Verstappen, 17 out of 20. Still a very, very good Grand Prix weekend. Oh, so very close to pole position, but just not quite, 0.03 of a second in it. And then the Grand Prix, he did everything he could. Got the better start, led for literally every single lap of the Grand Prix apart from the last 10 or 12. So he did absolutely everything he could. But on raw pace, after both doing 2 pit stops, the gap at the end was about 18 or 20 seconds after 2 pit stops. So that pace in the Red Bull isn't quite there. But bear in mind, Barcelona is a Mercedes track. Monaco, that is a Red Bull track. So we will wait and see what happens when we head to Monaco in 2 weeks' time. But then from Verstappen and his 17 out of 20, we take a look at Perez, 14 out of 20. Now, I have heard as well that he was feeling a little bit on the unwell side, as well as having some issues with his left shoulder. So that is why he was a little bit on the slow side in qualifying. So I have taken that into consideration for his race ranks. But he did an exceptional Grand Prix, actually, cutting through from his poor qualifying in P8, jumping up at the start to about P6. So yeah, a very good Grand Prix for Sergio Perez, one to be happy with. But ultimately, he needs to be starting P4 and then he can really, really take it to the Mercedes with Red Bull. And then we take a look at the McLaren pairing, and it is Daniel Ricciardo to start us off first, and the best race he could have hoped for. I think he was P6, I want to say, maybe P5, but 16 out of 20. This is a stellar Grand Prix performance from Daniel Ricciardo, and this is what we need to see from the remainder of his races, as his teammate Lando Norris had a little bit of a struggle session. Only 14 out of 20 for Lando Norris. It was a good Grand Prix for McLaren as a whole, but ultimately Daniel Ricciardo was the quicker car throughout this whole weekend as well, and Lando Norris only scores 14 out of 20. And then we take a look at Sebastian Vettel, 11 out of 20. It was an okay qualifying. It was a bit unfortunate that he didn't get into Q3, and then in the race, it was just There were a couple of good battles, a couple of good defensive moves, but nothing really special, unfortunately, for Sebastian Vettel. So 11 out of 20 is his score. And then moving to his teammate Lance Stroll, 12 out of 20. For much the same reasons, and he only scores higher because he finished slightly higher. Still not in the points, which is a big shame. He had a small little battle and a small little tussle with Fernando Alonso, not going to the left of the bollards at the exit of turn 2, going into the entrance of turn 3, but nonetheless he lost out anyway. 12 out of 20 is his score. And then we take a look at Fernando Alonso, 9 out of 20. If there is going to be a harsh result, I believe it is going to be this one. It was a good qualifying. He got into Q3, qualified P10, but still, Q3 isn't that bad. But in the race, there's no pace. There was no pace whatsoever. And comparing that to Esteban Ocon, he did have some pace, but Alonso unfortunately had zilch. And talking of Alonso's teammate, we take a look at Esteban Ocon next, and he gets 13 out of 20. A very good qualifying to go P5, and then also a very good race. Ultimately, a extremely good weekend, and one to be happy for Esteban Ocon. But then, Charles Leclerc, 18 out of 20. This is his highest score that I have given him this season so far. A mega weekend. P4 in qualifying, stellar. And then P4 in the race as well. That just brilliant. In that Ferrari as well. I know that Ferrari has improved, but this is by far their best Grand Prix that they have had for a very long time after a miserable miserable 2020. A very, very good performance, an 18 out of 20 for Charles Leclerc. But his teammate Carlos Sainz gets a 15 out of 20. I believe this might just be the best score that I've given Sainz as well. I'm not 100% sure. I have to check my database on that. But yes, 15 out of 20 for Sainz. A decent qualifying and also a decent race. Some good battles and getting past Perez. Was he in a battle with Perez? No, it was Ricciardo that was in a battle with Perez, not Carlos Sainz. But yeah, some decent battles and 15 out of 20 for Sainz. And then we take a look at the AlphaTauri pair. We've got Pierre Gasly, 13 out of 20. And a little bit of a disappointing qualifying, not getting into Q3 after getting into Q3, oh my lord. A little bit of a disappointing qualifying after not getting into Q3 once again, but ultimately he made up for it and he finished P10. So a very, very good race for Pierre Gasly, and also getting in the mix in the last couple of laps with that midfield fight. So he gets 13 out of 20. However, Yuki Tsunoda, 8 out of 20. Now, his DNF was no fault of his own. It just stopped. He didn't go wide over any curbs. The engine just stopped. But the only reason he gets 8 out of 20 is he was never really in a decent position in the Grand Prix whilst he was running. And then equally qualifying, he was out in Q1. And I do take qualifying into account when I make these rankings. So 8 out of 20 for Yuki Tsunoda. Needs to do a little bit better. But it is his first season, and he's younger than me, which I do keep saying a lot in these videos, but yes, give him some time, and he'll get better. And then we take a look at Alfa Romeo, and Kimi Raikkonen had a decent race. A sort of, again, qualifying, just not really what they were after, but the race wasn't that bad at all. So 12 out of 20 for Kimi Raikkonen, but ultimately I didn't really see too much, and get involved too much with what was happening with Kimi Raikkonen, but I think he did quite well. So 12 out of 20. And then Giovinazzi, because he didn't do as well as Kimi Raikkonen, gets a 10 out of 20. Once again, an qualifying, and then just an race. Not really much going on at all, although they did have that really bodged pit stop, but that was absolutely nothing to do with Giovinazzi whatsoever. It was the fact that, very bizarrely, the puncture had already happened. The tyre was already flat, which is very interesting and definitely something for Alfa Romeo to look at, as I've never seen that before, where just before they're about to put the tyre on, he's punching it and it's flat. Yeah, I've never seen that before, so that absolutely ruined Giovinazzi's race, but yeah, 10 out of 20 is his score. Then we take a look at the Haas pair and we go to Mick Schumacher, 11 out of 20. I want to be able to give him like a 16 or a 17 for driving the socks off that car, but it would just sort of look a bit strange if I was giving Mick Schumacher 16s and 17s for driving the socks off that car. So 11 out of 20 is his score. He sort of went backwards a little bit. I know he had a decent qualifying. He actually out-qualified Nicholas Latifi, which was not bad in the slightest. But yeah, just sort of fell back in the race and didn't really have the race pace whatsoever. So 11 out of 20 is his score. However, Mr. Nikita Douchebag, 7 out of 20. This guy's just a knob. Yeah. He's just a knob. Then we take a look at the Williams pair and we go to George Russell. 12 out of 20 for him. Again, a decent qualifying. Getting into Q2, but then the race, he was running in the points actually. He was running in the points for a little while, but then he took a pit stop and then fell to P16 or P15, where again, just it's Barcelona, you can't overtake, no real pace in the car, and that was where he ended up finishing. But ultimately, a race that he can be happy with and can look forward to Monaco in the best hopes that Williams have possibly this season of scoring points. And then finally for my driver rankings video today, we will take a look at Nicholas Latifi, 10 out of 20. Qualifying sort of brings this score down a touch for me because he's out-qualified by Mick Schumacher in the dog crap car of a Haas. And then the race was again just a little bit no real pace whatsoever shown by Nicholas Latifi. So 10 out of 20 is his score. And there we go, there's the conclusions of my driver rankings for the Spanish Grand Prix, a race that actually was quite entertaining given this last string of Spanish Grand Prix that we have had. It still wasn't the most exceptional race of this season, but it was definitely, by Spanish standards, a very good race. Make sure to get involved following the link in the top line of the description to submit your driver rankings for the Spanish Grand Prix, 1 being the worst rank possible and 20 being the best. Please take into consideration qualifying and the race as well. But that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.